with the needs and the demands of the protesting masses. Thank you very much. The first person will go now.
Comrade Adaramoye Michael Lenin. I'm one of the organizations actively mobilizing for this End Bad Governance protest. I mean, just as my colleague said, the aim of this press conference is to address important issues pertaining to our protest. I mean, this is the fourth day of the protest, and we've seen different level of attacks, victimization across board, so that we wish to use this opportunity to address some of these important things and to also respond directly to some of the points made by Mr. President. Of course, I will not call those things points, but I mean some of the things he expressed this morning. So, comrades, good morning once again. Presidential broadcast. Tinubu is out of touch with the masses and the demands of our protest. The insistence that the protests are politically motivated shows a deep disconnection with the masses. The economic progress the president reads out are for himself and his cronies and not for the masses. The reference to protesters as misguided and uninformed shows that the president is a condescending dictator. We wish to express our sadness and deep disappointment at the latest broadcast by President Tinubu, which is the first address to the nation ever since the End Bad Governance protest started, which is now on the fourth day. After over 3 weeks since Nigerians started mobilizing to take to the streets, and after scores of dead protesters and assaulted journalists from the first 3 days of the protest, President Tinubu broadcast was nothing but a masterclass of gaslighting us, manipulating and double speaking that has plagued Nigeria's brand of public speaking for decades. Many had requested genuinely that the president should address the nation when the protest was being mobilized for, and some even felt that the president should also address even when the protest started, that perhaps he could make some points that could help douse whatever tension is on board. But to the surprise of many, who genuinely felt that if the president had addressed the nation, some of the demands of the protesters would have been captured and sharply addressed by the president. Many of them are today disappointed by what the president read out today. The president only justified state of violence on protesters because we all read out when the president tried to make it appear like what happened in the last 3 days. The level of death, injury, and attack on our fundamental rights is nothing but an unfortunate incident that could have been prevented. Of course, maybe too late could have been prevented only if the president himself had immediately met the demands of the protesters even before we commenced the protest. But what we witnessed was that the president himself, and not just him, even cronies, turned deaf ears to our demands. And the president had to start speaking to various special advisors, people of different names who were never appointed by Nigerians in the first place. The claim by President Tinubu that our protests are driven by a political agenda to tear Nigeria apart is nothing but an attempt to call a dog a bad name so that it can be hanged. It is a gross misrepresentation of the obvious facts and has become the economic reality of all Nigerians. These protests have been largely faceless and leaderless because it was a spontaneous response to the deep economic crisis experienced by Nigeria. The sharp inequality, barbarous corruption, and gross human rights abuses that we have seen every day before us. The protest was a lawful response of the Nigerian people to the failure of the Tinubu government and the entire ruling class to address this endemic systemic crisis after over 4 months in power. 14 months in power, rather. These protests were mobilized for by the flagrant extravagance of political office holders in Nigeria for the past 14 months, while asking Nigerians to be patient of hunger and hardship, which they claim to be our sacrifice for the nation. But what we have experienced within the 14 years is that those 14 months, is that those who ask us to be patient and have sacrifice are the same persons who are living luxurious lifestyle, who are budgeting millions and billions of naira to live lavishly. In fact, we heard when lawmakers bought vehicles worth over 130 million naira for themselves. At a point, even the president had to budget billions of naira to renovate the presidential building in Lagos. And from the record, the former president who spent 4 years in office only used that residence just twice in those 8 years. Yet the president felt the hardship faced by Nigerians were not needed. That what should be the priority of the government was to go and lavish billions of naira to renovate buildings. We think clearly that this itself is not sacrifice. That instead, Nigerians, the promises, are the ones being sacrificed by the Tinubu government. And it is on that basis that Nigerians themselves felt the need that enough is enough, that they cannot continue to live under this kind of hardship, especially when you consider the abundant resources we have in Nigeria to transform our lives, which was what mobilized for that protest. Because in the recent period, we've had many calls, especially from government supporters, that the protest, they need to know the sponsors or people who are mobilized for it. But we've made it clear at different points that the Tinubu government himself and the policies they've implemented over the years are the reasons why Nigerians took to the street. Therefore, they are the ones who have mobilized us for this protest. So, comrades, we'll move to the next speaker to shed more light on these points we'll make.
Of protesters. They have also done that by arresting journalists and demanding a media blackout on the protest, and by sponsoring thugs and looters to discredit our protest. It is therefore infuriating to hear that the same president claimed that he understands our frustration and sufferings. Our major blatant contradiction in this presidential broadcast is the part where he said our democracy progresses when the constitutional right of every Nigerian citizens are respected and protected. The actions of Tinubu's administration have been direct opposite of his statement, because they have been arresting journalists and protesters even before the mobilization for this recent protest started. These actions that are outrightly contradicting and undermining the constitutional rights he claimed to uphold. His administration has blatantly disregarded International Human Rights Convention. Yet he said in the broadcast that the security operatives should continue to maintain peace, law and order, following the necessary conventions of the human rights, to which Nigeria is a signatory. If this is not of this establishment, because as long as you keep having poor people around you, then even you are not safe. An average hungry man is a potential criminal. The president keeps making policies that only enriches the rich more, keep adding advantage to the rich and disadvantages to the poor. The boys who are seen on screen looting today, they have no other hope other than what is left on the left for them to do. We are just a little bit exposed and privileged. That is why we are also not part of them. And that's the only language they can communicate their own protest for the government to see. But I think the best thing for the government to do is to actually make an alternative plan for people who are hopeless, that are wandering on the street. And when there is now alternatives for them and they are not going about that alternatives, that is when you now call them criminals. And I think that the government is comfortable with the Nigerian society having enough criminals than having decent people, because by the time the Nigerian citizens want to protest, they need those criminals to do a counter protest for them, and also to blackmail a decent gathering of Nigerian people who are crying out, so that they can call all of us looters. So if you complain about looters today, you should ask the Nigerian police and you should ask the president, because they are the ones who created them. Thank you.
This press conference is necessary because for the past 3 days since we started this protest, we have been driven off the streets, even including the lawful place, the so-called lawful place, the so-called legal place where the FCTA Wike leadership got an injunction to say we should stick to the stadium and protest only at the stadium. We have been driven from there with tear gas for the past 2 days now. And so it is the essence of, that's the essence of us calling this press conference. First, we must be very clear that the press conference is demonstrating the fact that we have a president that is out of touch with the needs of the Nigerian masses. To further confirm that President Tinubu's disconnection from the masses borders on psychopathy, the president started reeling out economic figures in the typical neoliberal attitude that prioritizes some abstract economic growth over the immediate welfare needs of the people. This is the typical attitude of Nigerian leaders in the past, which our generation is rejecting, that you will not reel out economic figures to us while not connecting it to our present immediate needs. The broadcast further confirms how much the president is incapable of meeting the Nigerian masses at the point of their needs, but very capable of making policies that will benefit the private investors of his elite clique at the expense of the public. The excess talk about the economic growth and infrastructure development conveniently ignored the fact that these benefits have not trickled down to the masses for 14 months now. This is why we are protesting. We are protesting because we want these economic opportunities and resources to be distributed much more fairly and equally to many Nigerians and not just a few elite Nigerians. We are protesting because we want our own subsidies like fuel subsidy, electricity subsidy, education subsidy, telecom subsidy, etc. Especially in the light of the fact that Nigerian politicians have been doling out subsidies to their rich cronies in form of privatization, deregulation, deals and contracts. When President Tinubu said we have come this far in terms of economic progress in his speech, he was only speaking about the progress that is largely exclusive to his small elite gang. The progress has left majority of Nigerians behind. The president's call for dialogue rings hollow as much as his acclaimed commitment to democratic governance, given the fact that he has not only ignored the demands of those he claims to want to dialogue with consistently, but he has also suppressed and disregarded the human rights of those he claims to want to dialogue with. And we have to be clear about that. The president of Nigeria has said in the speech that we should stop protesting and embrace dialogue, as if protest itself is not a form of dialogue. And one thing we must be clear about is that the assault on Nigerians, it has become very, very usual, very common that we disregard it. We don't see it as a big deal. For the past 4 days now, except today, I have had to face tear gas despite being an asthmatic. And it was just this morning that I could afford the money to buy an inhaler. And that's because in Nigeria today, to buy an inhaler will cost you 8,250. That's the cheapest inhaler in the market. And that's why we are protesting. We are protesting because the first aid for a common sickness is 8,250 naira. In a country where the last minimum wage is 30,000 naira and they are here to start paying the 7,000 naira minimum wage. Comrades, they were injured, attacked, and 21 Nigerians that were killed on the first day of this protest. They are not just numbers. They are human beings like us who have died because they joined the struggle to make their country a better place. They are voiced out to make their country a better place. Our president in that speech spoke over the head of all of that. And we need to be enraged about that. His administration has arrested, maimed, and killed the hungry Nigerians who are the backbone and the soul of this protest. Yet he claims to want to dialogue with protesters. Is the president a necromancer open to dialogue with ghosts? How can an administration who is directly responsible for almost all of the violence and destruction that has plagued this protest lecture us on how we must not let violence and destruction tear our nation apart? The president has tried to make us look like we are the violent ones. But every day since we've been organizing, the violence has been incited by the Nigerian police, the DSS, the soldiers, and the civil defense. And we are saying that as Nigerians, we should not have to beg, we should not have to explain ourselves before we express our right to protest. The president's broadcast is dismissive and condescending to the people he claims to serve. The implicit claims that we are misguided and uninformed shows that he is unaware of our role as citizens. which is to inform and guide him on the issues that matters to us. The issue we met on ground in Nigeria has been that we have had a country where we praise our leaders as if they are not our servants. We believe it is the role of the citizens, the responsibility of the citizens to guide and inform the leaders. And so, the implicit attempt of President Tinubu to make us look like we are misguided, we are uninformed, we are sponsored, and that's why we are protesting, shows again that our president is out of touch. He should be listening. We should be the ones lecturing him on democracy and good governance and policies to address the issues fueling the protests. Given Tinubu's gargantuan history of corruption and self-enrichment through public wealth, he is the one who needs a lecture and probably a mental rehabilitation. He is so corrupt that he has reduced the trust of Nigerians in the government just by emerging as president. We cannot look out there. Across countries in Africa, people are taking polls of how much people have trust in their government. And Nigeria today is lowest on those polls. Because just by emerging alone, through a very corrupt electoral process, Tinubu has reduced the confidence of the people, the trust of the people in their governance. And a country where people don't trust in the governance of the day is a country that will especially be unstable. Because if the government is not responsible to the people don't owe anything to the government, and they don't owe the government to respect any law and order. And that is writing letter to chaos. And that is why we are saying we are the peaceful ones in this protest. We are the ones trying to ensure that Nigeria does not descend into chaos because of the poverty, the instability, the alienation that we see every day on our streets. We must state clearly that this broadcast only makes it clearer that Tinubu is a dictator and not a democrat. The broadcast only exposes Tinubu for who he is, a megalomaniac and unprincipled dictator who wants to use force and coercion to consolidate his power. We therefore call on non-Nigerians to come out in large numbers to continue this protest on Monday until our demands are met. By now we would notice that the Tinubu government has gone to the press to tell the press to stop capturing this protest with the hope that they can kill us all in silence. Yesterday, before we started the protest, where we were tear-gassed at the National Stadium, the cronies of the Tinubu government had gone online to say that protest is not holding today, that the youth are afraid, they can no longer protest again. But when that protest gathered momentum, they tear-gassed us and dispersed us. So this is to show that this government is only trying to use force and propaganda to stop us from actually organizing ourselves as Nigerians to demand for a better country. It is not too much to ask. The two-pronged approach of violence and propaganda has failed. The violence and repressions are just attempts to silence and control us, and the propaganda cannot sway or fool us. The struggle for a new and better Nigeria continues. We must not be tired. The future of Nigerians depend on our determination at this moment. And we use this opportunity to call on the people of Nigeria, especially those living in the FCT, to make their best efforts to participate in the protests as from tomorrow. We appreciate the fact that many Nigerians have trooped out to say that our demands are legitimate. This is the reality on the streets. And we must also point out that asking Nigerians to not protest, when that same government asking us not to protest, presently I got here late because there are 4 queues on the streets right now. So a government that is asking us not to protest but is making fuel scarce and making it very expensive, and the government would come on here and not touch on those issues and tell us that the fuel subsidy removal is still working. We want to ask, who is it working for? Is it the corrupt politicians who have built refineries in Malta? Who is the fuel subsidy removal working for? Is it working for the Nigerian masses? This is what we want to ask the Nigerian government. And this is why we are saying that please Nigerians do not be swayed by the fact that they have tried to keep you at home with the fuel scarcity, by the fact that they have tried to keep you at home. Please come out tomorrow and protest. One thing we want to make clear is this: the court order to stop us from protesting anywhere we want, especially at the seat of power, which is the National Assembly and the 3-arm zone. That court order is not constitutional because Nigerians reserve their right to move on public roads. Public roads are built with public money. Nigerians reserve their rights to freedom of movement, freedom of speech, freedom of expression, and freedom of dissent. We should not have to beg the government before we assert our freedom of assembly. And so we would like to tell this government that the only way we can dialogue is what we are doing right now. We are doing this now to tell the government that this is our dialogue. We are telling the government that our demands still stand. Reversal of fuel price to what it was before May 29, 2023. Reversal of electricity hike, tariff hike. Reversal of school fees increments across board. Reversal of all of the taxes that the tax master himself, Tinubu, has introduced. These are our demands, and we are not reneging on these demands. Even though Tinubu has tried to tell us that the protests are stopped, Nigerians are tired. Presently, today, Sunday, this morning, protests continued in Jos Plateau State, with protesters organizing their own Sunday service at the protest. Even in Lagos, the same thing happened today. On Friday, we had protesters who did their Juma service at the protest ground. And so, we are saying that Nigerians are fully in support. And this is not the time to be afraid. This is not the time for us to go to our rooms and start praying that God will save us. God needs us to save ourselves. This is not the time to start saying, Shebi, God saved us from Abacha now. God will save us from this one. To know, this is not a military regime. And we must assert the fact that we are in a civilian democracy and we must be treated constitutionally as citizens of Nigeria. On this basis, we want to charge Nigerians that we must continue to organize, resist, and build till we have a country that prioritizes the people of Nigeria over the profit and power of a few people. The struggle continues. A luta continua.
Victoria and Sarah.
Thank you very much.
Your name and organization before you start.
National Coordinator, Arewa Youth Ambassadors. And we start with salute our people who has been killed by police officers in Kano, Katsina, and the other places. We better die on the street by our country's bullet than die by hunger. We are not afraid of bullets. We are not afraid of tear gas. We are afraid of life without purpose. A life without hope, and that is what our leaders have given us. We demand change, we demand justice, and we demand it now. We will not silence, we will not intimidate it. We will not fight for our, we will fight for our future, even if it means give our lives. To our leader, we say you have failed us, you have betrayed us, but we will not be defeated. We will rise up, we will resist, and we will claim our country. To our fellow Nigerians, we say join us, stand with us. Together we can make a difference. Together we can create a better future. We better die on the street by our country's bullet than live a life of slavery and oppression. Thank you very much.
Yes, I think we need to make the point clear. My committee had made our demands clear. But in addition to those demands, because I will not let the death, those who have died, to just be another death. Because we witnessed what happened to NSAS. All of the persons who were killed then, till today, we've not been able to get justice for them. so that we need to hold the persons who are accountable for the attack on our fundamental human rights, as well as the killing of innocent protesters across the nation on the very first day of this protest. So that we are demanding that the IGP and including the CP of police in Abuja must be held accountable for the gross human rights abuses that happened on the very first day of this protest in Abuja and elsewhere too. And also, we also need to make it clear that the Minister of FCT, the Garulus Wike, he has undermined the right of citizens in Abuja to peacefully protest and even gather, which is why we are faced with this court injunction. So that we are also calling that the man that Wike himself is unfit to continue to govern within the democratic sphere of the FCT. And again, tomorrow we'll be out in mass. Our people will be out to further the protest, because the protest continues. As you all recall, it is a 10 days protest, and even aside that, 10 days and beyond. Because from all indication, the government does not appear or is not displaying any form of readiness to meet our demands. We also read what the president read out today. No single demand from this protest was addressed by the president. So that our protest continues. And tomorrow is going to be a mass protest on Monday, and we'll be gathered at the National Stadium. And the question that was asked, are we going to go inside the stadium or not? What we've said for the very first day is that we are protesters. We are not footballers. We are not athletes, and we don't have the intention to prepare for Olympics yet. So that our protest will converge at the front of the National Stadium to exercise our democratic right. And I said earlier that the court injunction against us is an attack on the democratic rights of us as citizens. And we are going to fight that on the street to ascertain, to make clear that we have the right to gather, and we have the right to also move, because we will not let the government to tell us how to express our anger. We will not let the government to restrict us to say protests can be held at social point. Because like we said earlier, our parents fought so hard against the military dictators. We are not going to watch in our own generation, our own time, why under civilian rule citizens cannot protest or citizens cannot gather where they are supposed to gather. So on Monday, we'll be held en masse and we'll be held to exercise our rights, both the freedom to assembly and the freedom to move. So we need to make this very clear. And also, we need to make one important point, that the government of the day is gradually introducing the military into this protest. From the very first day, the military came in their armor tank. Although they were not active, but they came driving into protesters in the way of dispersing us. The second day, they were also there. The third day, many of our protesters were shot at. When the police exhausted their tear gas, the military came in to disperse protesters on the second day, the evening, at the National Stadium. Yesterday, while police were attacking us, the military were moving with them. We connect these dots together, that the government is embarking or trying to use the military the way they did during the Lekki Toll Gate massacre on innocent protesters, which is why they are demanding today that media should not cover the protest again. We are saying that we will not allow another Lekki Toll Gate to repeat itself, and that the government of Tinubu is embarking on this sinister agenda to kill innocent protesters by using the military. And like I said earlier, yesterday the military themselves were there. The police were the ones leading the military to attack the citizens. And if care is not taken, the military will be the ones to start leading police to attack and kill innocent citizens. So we are making all of these points clear that the IGP and the CP of police, including Nelson Wike, who is the FCT minister, must be held responsible for all of the attacks that happened in Abuja within the last 72 hours of our protest. Thank you very much.
As of now,
No arrest. We have that of arrest.
As per the figures of those who have been arrested, injured, brutalized, those who have been already killed, the figures presently for day one was 21. But we feel that the figures are conservative because we have not been able to account for every of those the protesters that are missing across the country. On that first day alone, about over 1,000 protesters were arrested and presently still in jail, still in detention. This nationwide, this is a democratic protest of the Nigerian people. Yesterday, which is the third day, for the second day, we also had a number of casualties, over 20. We are not also sure of the figures yet because of the inability to account across the country. Yesterday in Abuja, where we protested, several people were arrested. Presently, we are trying to recover one of them, which is Ayola Babalola. He's a journalist, but he joined the protest as a protester and is presently in Wuye Division Police Station. He was picked up when we were being dispersed, peacefully protesting. So, we are calling on Nigerians, and this is not a task. This is not a task for just activist lawyers. We are calling on the NBA, which is the professional body of lawyers in Nigeria. The lawyers will have nothing else to defend by the time Tinubu tears apart the Nigerian constitution. If there's nothing to defend anymore, then the lawyers have no job to do again. The people will sort out their differences on the streets, and it will be chaos. And so we are appealing to the NBA, which is the professional body of lawyers, to join in this struggle and ensure that across the country, everybody, alongside the activist lawyers who are already taking up this issue, across the country, we get all protesters and detained Nigerians released. We are also appealing, because what we have heard recently is that the Inspector General of Police instructed hospitals that if there's anyone with a gunshot wound, they should report to the police first. This is something that's created crisis in this country last year in Abuja, when someone was not treated because the doctors were waiting for a police report. The same police came and said it is no longer necessary, that doctors can start treating people. But because the protest is going on, they brought in that policy again and are asking that if there's anyone with gunshot wound, the doctors should report to the police before they are treated. That only means that the police is preparing to shoot protesters and ensure that they don't get treatment until they are dead. This is the climate we are in Nigeria. And everybody must be aware we are now in a civilian dictatorship. We must be very, very aware of that. And we must be ready as Nigerians to defend our rights to have a democratic country. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Forever. Solidarity forever. Solidarity forever. We shall always fight for our rights. There is victory for us. There is victory for